This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Hello and welcome back to the Twilight Highlight Zone. I'm Ben Hansen, joined by...
Hey, it's me, Jeff Cork. Hey, round of applause for us. We did it.
Second ever video version of the Twilight Highlight Zone, a podcast that we started back in 2013, I do believe, to review each and every episode of the classic Twilight Zone series. We brought it back. Do you remember the uproar in the fan base? Just the jubilation when we brought it back for the Jordan Peele reboot of Twilight Zone.
It was deafening. We want to know what you think about this CBS All Access show before we subscribe. He said, okay, we'll let you know.
Which, by the way, the second season will be coming out at some point, and we're pot committed, baby. We're seeing this.
I haven't let my subscription lapse. I've been just binging on old Murder, She Wrote, and there's some Star Trek stuff on there, apparently.
More than you can imagine.
Good grief.
Yeah, I think I paid just for the Star Trek screensaver and CBS All Access.
Oh, no.
But anyways, if you're watching the video version of this on YouTube, on MinnMax's YouTube channel, you can listen to the audio version, which is in a standalone free podcast feed, as free as you can get it. So search in your favorite app for Twilight Highlight Zone, and the full archive should be there of every review we've ever done for every episode of this godforsaken show that we love.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's
and
true.
If you're listening to the audio version, you want to see us in the flesh.
No, don't.
Run. Run the other way. But we are on YouTube channel, youtube.com/MinnMax show.
Would you say that it's an experience more similar to The Masks or Eye of the Beholder?
I'm going to go with Eye of the Beholder. No change. No change at all. Okay, here we go.
All right.
This is an episode that I think literally we've been talking about doing for like 7 years.
Yes.
Because going through and reviewing so many episodes of The Twilight Zone, it's like, oh, well, I know this from The Simpsons, from the Treehouse of Horror parody. And it's just coming up again and again and again. And now with Disney Plus out and about, parading through town, it's like, this is the perfect time. Probably a lot of people watching this will have access to every episode of The Simpsons. So
masterfully cropped. Optimal resolution.
It's so hideous, isn't it? Like those early episodes where they're zooming in to get at 16:9. Some of these shots are rough, where it's just like a line by their eye, and it's like double. It's just gross.
Yeah.
But anyways, what we're doing is we're going through every Twilight Zone reference in The Simpsons. Some of these are obviously bigger than others.
Okay, we're doing every reference?
Well, here's the thing. We'll acknowledge everyone because there's a very handy notation on the wiki for every reference, but we tried to boil it down to like just the big references here, primarily.
So the important thing to know is that this is free, right? You're getting this content free. So when you're reading from a wiki, you, the viewer, are not paying for that.
No, that's for the exclusive MinnMax show that's at the $5 tier on patreon.com/MinnMax2Ns, where I just randomize and bring up a wiki entry and then
you just kind of come to yourself,
I'll post the link on Patreon if you want to check it out there.
Yeah, upload is kind of problematic.
Cork, going through these old Simpsons episodes, Simpsons has been my favorite show for a very long time. It's like, well, I guess in its whole, I might go with like The British Office for the most consistent. But in terms of like the show that has brought me the most happiness, probably the most influential show in my life, it has to be The Simpsons. What is your history with The Simpsons, Jeff Cork?
With The Simpsons, I remember the first time I saw it, because we didn't have Fox, like the channel, so we didn't get Tracy Ullman show when it was originally airing.
Yeah.
But The Simpsons shorts were like pre-roll trailers that would run before like VHS tapes like you could get sometimes. So I think we watched Say Anything. If you rented that original VHS release, it had one of the Simpsons shorts before it. So that was my first exposure to it. And then that was like an era, like we had a friend who lived down in America and they came back with like some tapes. So I saw a bunch of the early episodes of The Simpsons through that. So it was just like this highly coveted tape collection.
Yeah.
And then eventually we got Fox, and it was very exciting because then we could watch it and loved it so much. It was such a good show.
Yeah, going back through this, I was dying watching these early episodes. They are so funny. And it's tough to have this conversation about the Twilight Zone parodies on The Simpsons without just literally reading down a list of very funny jokes. So this episode will devolve into that a couple of times because I don't know how else to talk about The Simpsons. We can't pontificate. They're not all going to be about the nature of God. Only one will probably be about the nature of God.
Right.
Yes. I mean, how many times did you laugh out loud?
Gosh, a zero. But I'm not a big laugh out loud at TV shows by myself.
Okay.
Kind of thing. If I'm with other people that I kind of feed off of that energy,
Yeah.
not in a phony way, but in a cool, well-adjusted kind of way.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very smart. Did you watch it with your kids or anything?
No.
Because I want to know how the younger generation would react to this. Because watching this, like, you can't get funnier than this.
It's interesting because my oldest kid is watching, and he started with like season 1, and I think he's up to like season 8 or 9, just watching every episode. He's also watched every episode of Friends because some kid he went to school was like, "Hey, you should watch Friends," and he's like, "Okay, I will watch every episode of Friends."
Just because his mom is probably really into Friends, and
I don't know.
Weird. Okay,
that's very strange. But yeah, so he's up to like season 8, I think.
Okay, and he likes it.
He likes it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, should we dive into this mess here?
Yeah, real quick. I just had a question that I wanted to ask you earlier. I don't know if this is like better suited for the end when we talked about it, but I'm just curious. Do you think that most people are familiar with Twilight Zone episodes because of The Simpsons? Like, do you think that the Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, or do you think To Serve Man in particular, do you think anyone would know what that twist was if not for The Simpsons?
That's really tough. Or even if you like factor in, total views for the original.
Yeah.
Let's go with just Nightmare, right? So the original versus the movie version versus the Simpsons parody.
Right.
Versus even like, what is it, Ace Ventura, when he said, there's something on the wing. Like, I just want to know like total views for each of those. I mean, Simpsons has to be number 1 at this point, right?
Yeah,
because
I think so.
I mean, that's how I was exposed to Twilight Zone originally, was just through these parodies, and then realized like, oh, they're pulling it all from one source. Okay. Right. And then when the marathon started with Twilight Zone, it's like, okay, now I see where they got all these Treehouse of Horror ideas going through this whole thing. So the first real one here is season 2, the Treehouse of Horror, the first one. So it's always confusing because you started in season 2, so the numbering off. So season 2, it's Treehouse of Horror 1, and it kind of flows from there. But Lisa finds the cookbook. It's how to cook for 40 humans, how to cook humans. It's that whole twist. Right. You know how it goes. How to serve man from the classic episode.
Exactly.
Nothing too remarkable there. Did you have more thoughts going through that?
Yeah, you said it's going to devolve into like saying some jokes and everything.
Love it, man.
Like that one, also had, like that's the first time you see like Kang and Kodos.
Yeah.
Who have been like recurring characters for those the tentacled aliens with the domes who are always like salivating. From Rigel 4. And they have like, they're talking about all the amazing things they have on their ship, and they show like what's Pong basically. And the Simpsons are completely not impressed by it. And then Marge says, "Your game is very nice." And it just made me laugh. Interestingly enough, though, the ball spins one time, which is not what would happen in Pong.
My God. Outrageous.
I was outraged. I did walk around the house 2 times.
Pretty close to the original?
Fairly close to the original.
Okay.
Yeah, except for the twist was that they did not want to eat the family, and they were like, their feelings were very hurt at the end.
Yeah. It's so weird to like have this sampling of The Simpsons and to like move to the eras. Obviously, video quality and stuff will go get quite a bit different throughout the eras, and then also, I don't want to dwell too much on this, but it's like also my laughter definitely subsided by the end. And also it's like they kind of ran out of classic Twilight Zone episodes to parody. So some of these even later on, it's like it's kind of a stretch to call it a parody. Yeah. It's like loosely inspired by in some ways. But it's nice that like for these early ones, they're just trying to be as strong as possible for like, let's just do that entire storyline again. Right?
Absolutely.
Season 3 of The Simpsons, Treehouse of Horror 2. It's weird. They don't have like segment names at this point yet. So it's just like a series of nightmares. And this is Bart's Nightmare, and it ends up being a parody of, I forget if we named this the number 1 episode or the number 2 episode of all time of The Twilight Zone. It's a Good Life.
Yes.
With our boy Bill Mooney.
Yep. Adorable little tot.
Number 1 lad. Which, by the way, have you played the tabletop game Just One?
No.
Okay.
I've heard you talk about it, though.
It's very fun. So it's like, you just give 1-word clues to try and get somebody to guess the word you have, but you don't want to be too obvious because then they cancel each other out, yada, yada, yada. But I was playing with my girlfriend's family, and the word was mummy. And my girlfriend's dad, as the 1-word clue, wrote Billy. And I was over the moon. I was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh my God, Billy Moore. He's like, you know who that is? I'm like, of course, It's a Good Life. And he's like, yeah. He didn't seem too interested. He was he's like, Lost in Space. Yeah, I know, but it's also It's a Good Life. That wasn't too interesting. But I thought that was an amazing clue.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Anyways, okay, so this episode actually opens with, I believe it's Harry Shearer doing a Rod Serling impersonation, which is very fun. And I went back, and so, he's like, oh, everybody here has to be happy as can be, because there's a monster stalking them in the streets. Did I mention the monster is a 10-year-old boy? Quite the twist, huh? Bet you didn't see that coming. And then I went back and watched the original intro, and it's pretty close, obviously without the commenting on the twist thing, but like it's that same structure of like, okay, this town is different. You have to be smiling and happy.
Right.
And except in the original, then he's a 6-year-old boy.
Yeah. Oh, good. The curtains are on fire.
Yeah. Jasper turns into the dog, everything like that.
Yeah. America is called Bonerland because the test results or whatever Bart wrote down.
Yeah. Unlike the original, then in this version, in the original, the idea is that the boy like destroyed the rest of the world except for this town, which when you're trying to make a 9-minute parody for Treehouse of Horror, they don't have time to get into that kind of lore. So I guess all of America still exists in the Simpsons version.
Or at least Springfield does, because they interact with the town and people.
Right. But I like that Otto's like, Bart gets on the bus. And he's like, hey, Otto, I'm going to drive the bus. And I was like, no can do, Bart, man. And he's like, oh, wait, you're the dude with the gnarly powers? And so he lets him drive the bus. And then Otto's like, hey, this is pretty fun. We're all going to die, huh? Like, Otto is such a strong component running through these episodes. Like, I forgot how funny he was in those early episodes.
Yeah. Oh, real quick, we should also talk about the conceit, because we're not going to go into the other stories.
Yeah.
But like each Treehouse of Horror, most of them have like a central conceit around why they're telling these stories. Like in the first one, every family member is trying to scare everybody with ghost stories.
Yeah.
And this one, they all eat too much candy, so they're having nightmares. And this is what the different characters are having nightmares about.
Right. And later on, it's like a parody of Night Gallery, which is very fun for other Rod Serling connection, which I haven't seen Night Gallery yet.
I've not seen Night Gallery either.
Okay, good. But I love it. So it's just a series of, it's like the perfect framing. Like, of course, Bart has to be the boy from It's a Good Life just to torture everybody. But it's so stupid. Like, again, this is what this episode's going to be, is reciting old Simpsons jokes. But when he calls Mo at the tavern, and Mo's like, all right, hang on a second. And he's calling out, he's like, hey, everybody, I'm an ugly moron with a big butt. My butt smells, and I like to kiss my own butt. And then, but instead of like, just giving into it like he has to do what Bart wants. Like he was actually tricked. So he says all that, then he goes, wait a minute. Like he didn't realize that it wasn't a real name.
Oh, no.
It's very good. And then Homer wants to watch the football game. Bart comes in. He wants to watch Krusty, which he's made be on the air
he
for.
Hasn't slept in how long? He's just completely falling apart. He's getting like kind of trucker pills from Sideshow Mel.
Yeah. And then he's like, oh, I want to watch it now. So then you just hear the announcer for the football game go, oh, and the ball is turning into some bald fat guy. But I love like it's so casual because like this world is just being tortured by Bart and his crazy brain powers where he has complete control of the universe. So I love it's like, well, here we go. The ball is turning into some ugly guy. Yeah.
And then he does the Jack in the Box thing with Homer.
Right. Yes. So I'm trying to remember in the movie version, we covered the Twilight Zone movie, which has a version of this. Do they do the Jack in the Box?
They don't
thing?
do the Jack in the Box.
So this is more of a parody of the original.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Which is great.
Yeah.
So they mentioned they go to Dr. Marvin Monroe with Homer as the Jack in the Box, and Marvin's like, I see you agree with a lot of my theories. And Homer's like, no, it's just the air conditioning. Because he's nodding as the Jack in the Box. And then they fall in love, and then that's Bart's nightmare, is he falls in love with his father once he turns him back into a human.
Yeah. Oh, there's the visual gag when they go down the roller coaster.
Very fun.
And Homer's head stays in the same spot. It's
good
stuff.
I mean, I had a couple of these episodes on VHS, but that's the crazy thing about watching all these is how baked into my soul everything is. Like, I haven't seen this episode in particular in, 20 years, maybe, but it's just insane. Like, oh, I know the next shot. I remember the animation, weird hiccup here, and especially like the soundscape. It's like listening to one of my favorite albums again that I haven't listened to for 20 years. Like I have this audio memorized, like little music cues, everything like that. It's just uncanny how baked in it is.
Yeah.
Does it? I mean, do you remember a lot of these beats, or does it feel pretty
absolutely.
new?
Yeah, it feels very familiar. I remember, like, for instance, the first Treehouse of Horror. I remember how much that Raven block drags. It seems like it will never end. Yeah, horrifying.
Unforgettable.
Yeah, I started by watching all the all the little other vignettes, and then I stopped because like when we started getting to more contemporary episodes, like, oh, this is just not my jam.
Yeah, very fair. The next one is season 4, Treehouse of Horror 3, and this is the parody of the Twilight Zone episode Living Doll.
Yes.
And the Simpsons version is called The Clown Without Pity.
The Clown Without Pity.
Yeah, what stood out to you here, Cork?
Oh, this one has like so many classic. It's got the Frogurt guy.
Okay, so yes, so hang on, is that? Yeah, it is. Okay, so he goes to this old shop.
Yes.
Well, hang on. There's a framing that made me laugh before that. So it's Bart's birthday and everybody's giving him toys. And then Bart goes, "Oh, what'd you get me, old man?" And Homer goes, "Don't worry. I forgot to get you a present." So then he goes to the toy shop, and then it's like the crazy old man who keeps talking about all the scary things he has.
That's good. That's bad.
Yes, the Frogurt is also cursed.
Yes.
Yeah. So he buys a little Krusty doll, and then just like Taki Tina in Twilight Zone, like the Krusty doll talks about how much he loves Bart, but then when it's alone with Homer, it's like, "I'm going to kill you," and Homer just keeps laughing at it for a while.
And the best part is, like, in Living Doll, like, Telly Savalas' character was a real jerk to everyone, so it made sense that Taki Tina would be kind of angry at him.
Yeah.
Just immediately, Krusty's just going off on Homer for no reason whatsoever.
We don't got time, man. In this Treehouse of Horror
gotta
format.
keep it going, yeah.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah, like you said, Homer's just laughing at it. Stupid doll.
And then at a certain point, Krusty's like in the shower with Homer trying to kill him, the little Krusty doll. And Homer runs out of the shower screaming naked, and Patty and Selma are sitting there. And Patty goes, "Well, there goes the last lingering thread of my heterosexuality." And then, much like in the original, Homer like locks Krusty the doll in a box and then tries to, unlike the original, he goes out and tries to bury it.
Yeah.
Does he bury it in Living Doll?
No.
He just puts it in the trunk of his car. I'm trying to remember.
He uses a saw on it, I think it was.
Yeah, but he does do the weird lockbox, I thought. Anyway, so then like he buries it out back.
He does the bottomless pit.
Right. The
bottomless pit gag, which is one of my favorite things ever. Is like people are just like throwing bodies in this bottomless pit and everything, and then one guy is like, Why do I think anyone would want to buy nude pictures of Whoopi Goldberg? And he throws this box into the pit, and then the pit goes, spits it back out, and he catches it.
It's just a stupid joke.
So
but then I love that Krusty is like on Homer's head, the Krusty doll, clawing at him. And Homer's running by, and he goes, "Marge, the doll's trying to kill me. The toaster's been laughing at me." Like, as he's being murdered, he throws in this detail about the toaster. And then it turns out there's a switch in the back for a Krusty
they call tech
doll.
support.
Yeah, and it's just, it turns out it was switched to evil. It should be switched to good.
Yep.
The end.
Yeah, and also Krusty lives with Malibu Stacy in Lisa's dollhouse.
Oh, that's right.
Kind of a creepy moment the first time you see that interaction.
Hasn't aged well, but you know what? What are you going to do?
Speaking of things that haven't aged well, there's more of that coming.
Oh, yes, there is. I know exactly where you're going with it. All right, so season 5, Treehouse of Horror 4, Terror at 5.5 feet. Very fun. So it starts out in like the framing device. First, Millhouse is showing, I think it's Millhouse, and they're showing like Krusty the Clown trading cards.
Yes.
And it's like the new issue when he's running out of ideas.
Yeah.
And one of them is Krusty poses for trading card photo. And then it's like another nightmare framing for Bart, which is very strange. And so he gets onto the bus, auto driving again, being hilarious, and he walks by Skinner. And Principal Skinner says, "I'm riding the bus today because Mother is punishing me for talking to a woman on the phone. She was right to do it." So you have like Skinner as the voice of authority on the bus. Obviously, it's a classic parody of...
He's like the U.S. Marshal.
Yes.
The Air Marshal, rather.
Well, this is the thing. It's like watching this one, it's like the gremlin is like this small, almost like Dr. Seuss-like creature. And so it's much less like the Abominable Snowman
it's like
creature.
The movie one.
So this one's more based on the movie version of
Right.
Twilight Zone in a weird way with like the more actually gremlin, slimy-looking guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
That one, I think, is the first time you see Uter, the foreign exchange student.
Yeah. Eventually,
Yum Yum.
It's next to him. And I remember Hans Moleman as a kid was like one of the funniest characters because he was just so rare, just perfectly rare in those early seasons. And so Bart's trying to let Otto know that there's a gremlin on the side of the bus. And Otto's like, "Thanks for the heads up, Bart, dude." And he like rams Hans Moleman off the road. He's driving an AMC Gremlin. And then this car blows up when it like just touches a tree barely a little bit. Then, and Skinner, as Bart's screaming, "There's a gremlin on the side of the bus, gremlin on the side of the bus." Hey, by the way, if you're watching and listening to this and you want us just to stop telling jokes, retelling jokes, let us know in the live chat that doesn't exist because we're going to be doing that a lot. But Skinner walks to the back of the bus and he goes, "No, I've got word that a child is using his imagination and I've come to put a stop to it." And then
they tie him up.
They tie him up, and then, of course, the foreign exchange student just releases him.
Yeah. And then isn't that shortly after they open the window?
He does the whole window
decompression. Kids are getting sucked out of the bus
They
window.
treat it like it's the airplane, in the original with William Shatner. Oh, just like a little toy on the desk here. But I love that bit, too, because before that, he actually opens the window shades.
Yeah.
And they do, like, the full parody of the original Twilight Zone then, where it's kind of the abominable snowman-looking creature, except it's groundskeeper Willie. And he does, like, the exact same head animations of, like, the slight turn and stuff.
Yep.
And then he gets on the bus and he says, "I had to get on the bus. My mule wouldn't walk in the mud, so I had to put 17 bullets in him." And then a weird ending where Flanders takes the gremlin as, like, a child that's trying to claw his eyes out.
Yep.
And then it goes one step further, unlike in the original Twilight Zone, where it's like, oh, thank God. And it turns out he was right the whole time. There actually was somebody clawing, because you see the damage on the wing.
Yep.
Simpsons goes one step further, and then he's in the ambulance, and then the gremlin attacks the ambulance and shows that he severed Flanders' head. It's very good. And then Skinner, as they're putting him in the ambulance, Skinner says, "Perhaps spending the remainder of your life in a madhouse will teach you some manners." Okay, this is the first real episode.
That was Terror at 5.5 feet.
That was
that segment.
Correct. Oh, and actually we should go off the hot wiki here, because apparently Marge on the Lam, episode 87 from season 5, Lionel Hutz has a line where he says, "This isn't the YMCA." Appears to be a reference, this is from the wiki, it appears to be a reference to the Twilight Zone episode Person or Persons Unknown, in which the protagonist snidely remarks, "This isn't the YMCA." Which is like, that's a level,
like a real stretch.
Do you think that was a reference?
I think that's a coincidence.
It could be, but hey, God bless the wiki for providing that level of detail. Okay, this is the first full episode outside of Treehouse of Horror that is clearly Twilight Zone inspired. Bart's Comet from season 6.
Yes.
This is taking elements from The Shelter. So with Bart's Comet, this is...
Oh, God.
It's a stupid weather balloon joke.
So good.
It's amazing. So there's a weather balloon they're launching at the school. Then Bart reveals that it's Principal Skinner, and it's his big butt cheeks. He's on Big Butt Skinner. And Principal Skinner says, whoever brings down that weather balloon doesn't have to learn fractions. And everybody starts attacking it, and like all the rocks they're throwing at it are like hitting Principal Skinner's car. And so then he's like, "Groundskeeper Willie, take down that weather balloon." And Groundskeeper Willie just has a shotgun immediately on him, fires at the weather balloon, misses, instead is firing by 2 fighter jets flying over Springfield.
Yeah, they've been called to check out the mysterious anomaly, right?
I don't think so. I just took it as random, like a random flyover of these 2 jets. But this is the hardest that I laughed, I think, through all these, because like they use the scanning equipment on the jets, and it has a perfect outline of Groundskeeper Willie, and then it's like Iraqi fighter jet, like located.
Yeah.
And so the fighter jet fires a missile to shoot Groundskeeper Willie because he fired at him. And the missile goes out and then hits the fighter jet right next to him and blows him up. And then he fires a second one and the missile goes out. Then does a 180 and he goes back and blows him up. It's just like the dumbest sight gag joke. And then they fight as they're going down and talk about funding to the military versus healthcare. Of course they overdo it. But God, that absolutely killed me. I did not remember that stupid fighter jet joke.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So as punishment, Bart has to help Skinner with his astronomy.
Right.
Because he's an amateur astronomer. So like at 4 a.m,
when his alarm clock goes off and it's like, "Hey, this is the news on the radio." But of course there is no news at 4 a.m. because everyone's asleep in their sweet comfy beds.
So he's basically... He just like Skinner won't let Bart look through the telescope either.
Yeah.
So he's just like giving him numbers to write down
for like hours and hours.
No object spotted. Yeah.
And then he goes out to try and take down the weather balloon.
He sees something, and then he calls like the "Hey, can you verify there's an object here?" And then the people at the Astronomy Institute or whatever are like, "Oh, it's a weather balloon." It was
no, he sees it. Yeah. I watched this more recently. So he looked through the telescope.
That's right.
Saw the weather balloon. Skinner goes for that. Then Bart's looking through the telescope, even though Principal Skinner told him not to touch it. And he sees the comet, calls it in.
Yep.
gets the comet named after him. And so Principal Skinner grabs the phone at the last second to hear that this amazing comet's named after Bart instead of him, which his whole life goal has been to have some astronomical object named after him. So he's like, no! And then the weather balloon releases in the sky and he goes, no! And then a newspaper guy comes by, drops off a newspaper, and the front of the newspaper, the headline story is, Prez says school is for losers. And he goes, no! And then it's revealed, like, Bart's like, oh, welcome into, like, the nerd community, into school and all this stuff.
Oh, God, the Super Friends.
Yes, and Lisa's in it, which is a fun little
Ham,
sweet detail.
email, cosign, report card, database, and Lisa.
So he's like, oh, you don't
Cosmo.
need... Yeah. It's like, you don't need a telescope to see my comet. It's right there. And they're like, okay, buddy. He's like, no, really, it's right there. And then it's just full-on Final Fantasy VII, like, the giant comet in the sky hovering. Yeah. And, like, I know you're not a huge... 7 guy, but it's crazy because it's like hovering in the sky, and I looked at it, and so this came out 1995. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know it's a stretch to be like, oh, it's definitely inspired by it. It's weird for this to come out in 95, Final Fantasy VII to come out in 97. They both just have like that static hovering comet.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a trope? Has that been done a lot before?
I don't know. Yeah.
Anyways, so the town is panicking. Mayor Quimby comes in. And he's like, people of Springfield, I mean Springfield. And it's like this recurring joke that he's just never at Springfield, which they don't really get into anywhere else in The Simpsons, but I love that that's in there. And so they're showing like diagrams of what's going to happen with this comet when it hits Springfield. Yeah. And it shows the comet hitting Springfield and it like blowing up. And then for some reason they have an arrow on the diagram going to Moe's Tavern. And Moe's like, oh dear God, no. And then the next one is just like a crater where Springfield used to be. And then there's like dots all over with an arrow going to that. And it says charred corpses. It's just like unnecessary putting this detail in there. And then of course they say, oh God, no. The refrain with Moe and all that stuff. So on their drive home, this stupid subtle joke really made me laugh. Lisa's like, I don't think we should be as confident in their plan, which is just to fire a rocket and blow up the asteroid or the comet. I think we should be worried about this. And Homer goes, didn't you hear what that guy in the building said? Like, we don't have to worry about it. But let me say, I don't even remember where he was. It's the guy in the building. And so then they fire the rocket to try and take out the comet. It then goes too close to the sun, like Icarus, they say, and then just takes out the one bridge leaving Springfield, apparently.
So nobody can evacuate.
Right. But then later on, they show people trying to jump the bridge and just dying in their cars as they plummet to their deaths, which killed me. And so then they cut to Congress talking about, like, okay, here's how we're going to save Springfield, a mandatory evacuation of Springfield. But then somebody puts...
Like attach a writer to fund the perverted arts?
So everybody votes no. And Ken Brockman's like, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Democracy simply doesn't work. And then
finally the Twilight Zone part starts.
Then it's like the back half gets towards the shelter. So in the shelter, the Twilight Zone episode,
right.
The way this works is just like, oh, a fancy dinner party. And then they find out, they're like, oh, there are unidentified flying objects in the air, which is like, oh, are they going UFOs? But no, they're going for missiles.
Right.
Like that the Russians or somebody are going to be bombing us. And so the president said, like, get to your shelter, and only one person had the bomb shelter. So he goes in there, and then, of course, the rest of the town goes mad. It's very Monsters Are Due on Maple Street for, like, the overall vibe, but it culminates then in them, like, ramming the door down in the one bomb shelter, and then as soon as they get through the door, then there's another announcement from the president where he's like, oh, never mind. I guess it wasn't anything at all. What do they say? Oh, it turns out they were satellites, not missiles, just satellites.
Whoops.
So then it's a very, sappy ending with the guy that was in the bomb shelter be like, well, we don't need to be scared of what's in the sky or our neighbors. We should be scared of ourselves with the way we've all acted here today, type of thing. So the Simpsons version of that is that it's like, okay, everybody get to your bomb shelter. And Homer's like, don't worry, I'm taking care of my family. I know exactly where to go. And then he goes bangs on Flanders' bomb shelter. He's like, let us in there. And Flanders like, oh, don't worry, I actually thought of this. So there's actually room for both of our families in the bomb shelter. And Homer's like, that won't do, get out. So then they pack in there. And this is my favorite stupid twist in Bart's Comet is then all the other townspeople come to the bomb shelter to try and get in there. And they have like broken bottles and like pitchforks. And like they knock on the door. which, by the way, Homer thinks is the comet hitting when they knock on the door. It's a very funny joke. So then the door opens, and they're like, hey, we want in. And Flanders is like, oh, there's no room in a bomb shelter. And then they're like, oh, okay, our bad. We didn't think of that. And they all just like leave.
Yeah.
But then Flanders is such a nice guy. He's like, okay, everybody go ahead and pack in.
Yeah.
And so everybody packs in.
It's a really nice shot of just every character from The Simpsons jammed in there.
Just the animation in that is crazy. Yeah, it's like, it feels like one of those Springfield puzzles or something. Because it's just like every face all in the one space, which never really happens in the rest of The Simpsons. And so they're talking about the new society. They need more elbow room. Somebody needs to be kicked out, and they realize the one thing we don't need is left-hand emporium. So Flanders himself has to leave. It's like Homer's idea as he's apologizing to the kids. And this part killed me.
Oh, God.
It's amazing when Flanders is like on his way out, and then he's like, well, when the comet gets near, I might scream because I might go mad with fear. So, Todd, I want you to shoot Daddy if he tries to get back in. And
he gives him a gun.
And Todd's like loading the gun as he's crying, like, okay, Daddy. And eventually they're trying to distract themselves because they can hear Ned like singing Que Sera, Sera outside. And so they're trying to distract themselves by the barnyard animal sound from Mo. Which is a baby ox. It's nebulous that always stuck out to me as a kid. And so then eventually, and this is like what I think is nice, and I know people have written about it, made videos about it, but the idea that Homer is like the sweet one. Homer's the first to break, even though he's a jerk in the first half of the episode, to be like, you know what, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go die with Ned Flanders outside because we're all turning into animals in here.
Yeah. That was like classic old Homer.
Yeah, where it had a little bit of a heart. And James L. Brooks touched, you might say, right? And so then Homer leaves, but before he leaves, he's like, I'm disgusted with all of you, especially his children. It's like Shane style again. So then it's nice where everyone's like, hey, wait a minute, I want out. I want to go die too. And they all go out, and then the meteor eventually crumbles up in the atmosphere, and the only thing it hits is the bomb shelter, which immediately collapses. This is very fun.
Yeah.
It's a sweet old episode. That one really made me laugh. There's a quick little reference. It wasn't worth covering too far in the episode, but in Homie the Clown, which I believe is my favorite episode of The Simpsons ever, then there's like the whole parody where it's Krusty going like, mirror, mirror, and it's a whole Eye of the Beholder parody where they're slowly unwrapping his face.
Yes.
And then they're like, oh, are you happy with the breast? He's like, did anybody hear me complaining about the breast? Because they also gave him boobs. Anyways.
That one seems as much as like a Batman reference as it does Eye of the Beholder, too. It's a little of both.
Batman 1989, that must have acknowledged Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that... Tim Burton, of course, is a fan of Twilight Zone, right? So it has to be a reference to that in some way. Yeah. But it's confusing. Anyways, next one is Season 7, Treehouse of Horror 6, which is the Little Girl Lost parody.
Yes.
Which is one of the craziest episodes of The Simpsons of all time, the Homer 3D chunk. Do you remember seeing this for the first time, Cork?
I remember seeing it and thinking it was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen.
This is where they have a 3D animated section of The Simpsons.
Yes.
And it's like, it's a Treehouse of Horror section, so it's what, like 8 minutes or something like that?
Yeah.
But like, I demanded that my friend Callie like record this on VHS so I could borrow that tape, and I watched this one endlessly because it blew my damn mind.
Right.
It was so much fun to look at.
Yeah, so it's basically there's a portal in their house that if you walk into it, you go into this other world, and you become like a CG version of whatever you want.
Well, the joke then is that like in Little Girl Lost in the Twilight Zone episode, they enter the fourth dimension.
Right.
And the little girl gets lost. By the way, the original is like not too far off from this. It's kind of fun. Like they even do the Professor Frink like drawing on the wall in the original and stuff. And they hear the little girl's voice in the original because she's lost in the fourth dimension. The dog is also lost there too. But then in this one, the joke is that Homer's entered the third dimension, and they're all trying to wrap their minds around it. There's a funny moment where Professor Frink goes on a chalkboard, and he's like, all right, everybody, now this is a simple square. And Wiggum's like, oh, hang on. He goes, slow down there, egghead. Yeah. And then he's explaining the concept of a cube, which is blowing everybody's minds. And then I love where they hear Homer's voice at first, and Marge is like, because they're trying to figure out where he is.
Right.
And it's like, do you see towels? If you see towels, you're probably in the linen closet again. Like, I don't think I see any towels. And then he's trying to explain where he is, and this is like the classic bit, in my mind at least, where he's like, did anybody see the movie Tron? It just goes around the room, everyone's like, no. And then Wiggum says yes. Like, I mean, no. Did you read that Entertainment Weekly article on the creation of this episode? In 2018, you should look this up, and it's like oral history of this episode.
Really?
Which is really fascinating. So this is quoting from the Entertainment Weekly article. He says, the genesis of the idea traces back to Bill Oakley, who was serving as co-showrunner of The Simpsons with Josh Weinstein at the time. He remembers a light bulb illuminating over his head while leafing through a Twilight Zone companion book that was lying around the office. I found Little Girl Lost, and I somehow made the connection. Hey, what if we pretended that The Simpsons were in the second dimension and they went into the third dimension? Initially, Oakley and his fellow writers were planning to have the characters embark on a journey through all sorts of animation formats, but that notion didn't last long. We were like, what can we really do besides paper cutouts? We do claymation, but that was third dimension too. Also, it dilutes the conceptual purity of going from second to third dimension. In the Twilight Zone, a little girl goes into the fourth dimension, so we said, let's dispose of all that other crud. So they recruited, apparently, an animation company that worked on like Terminator 2, and they were the animation company responsible for the CG Pillsbury Doughboy.
Oh.
Which is like perfect. I'm sure they like imported that model for Homer. Yeah, it's really crazy. But a big part of this article is just talking about like how little time they had to do it, how expensive it was.
Yeah.
Because I mean, back, when is this, 96?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so early on. Toy Story was a year before this. So another quote from the article, they say, take, for example, Homer's unprocessed fish sticks line. They were saying, well, we know water's expensive, but somebody on our team, on the CG team, had just done a really interesting water simulation, and I believe we were able to offer that shot of Homer's glistening drool falling into the water, creating gorgeous sine wave ripples. That was our big production value add to their fish sticks joke. So they pulled like from what they knew was already in the works for this company, and then like wrote the episode around that. That's why I think it's so odd. Speaking of that water scene, says the Entertainment Weekly article, I got some good notes from Brad Bird, who at the time was our storyboard consultant, future Incredibles director. Like the shot from looking up inside the little pond with the goldfish and seeing Homer through the water. That was apparently one of Brad Bird's shots. This is very cool. Yeah, I was obsessed with this episode, specifically like when Bart then joins him in the third dimension, and like seeing Bart's hair in 3D was so exciting because I also had a Simpsons chess set.
Okay.
And I was obsessed with playing with Bart's hair because like the 3D model toy-wise for Bart was so cool and funky. So like seeing that on the show was just mind-blowing.
It's like a meat tenderizer.
Yeah, exactly. And so Bart like has a rope. Oh, hang on. There's a moment where Abe Simpson, Grandpa, is going to go in to save him, and he's got like the full Big Daddy suit. Like, I just need 6 big men on the bellows, or whatever he says. And then like Professor Frink stops him from going into the other dimension. He says, no, it's too risky. There could be cubes the size of gorillas in there. So stupid. So Bart like wraps a rope around himself and goes in, which is much like in Little Girl Lost. The dad doesn't like tie the rope around, but he like tries to reach his hand in to get the little girl.
Yeah.
And then he eventually just like accidentally falls in, and then it's shot in such a weird way. If you remember this, where the camera's just like spinning around,
blurry and black void kind of a thing.
Yeah, and there's also just a lot of reflections, and like they're just putting a bunch of Vaseline on the lens and filming like a reflective sphere, like trying to show what the fourth dimension looks like. It's so hokey to go back and look at it, but it's very fun still.
It's not hokey like mid-90s CG.
Oh no, flawless. Yeah, how'd you think it held up visually?
It's all right.
The close-ups of Homer's face, like his eyelids or like any barrier, what's what I'm looking for, transition or anything between like textures, like that was where it really was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
It was rough. But then it has the most exciting ending where Homer falls into the vortex.
It's really sad.
It's crazy. And then he slams into real world LA, and like the velocity of him going into that garbage can is amazing.
Yeah.
And then it's him walking down the streets horrified by being in the real world. But like, honestly, top 10 most mind-blowing pieces of television I've ever seen in my life was that episode. I mean, what else is there? Mind-blowing? That was... I'm trying to think of anything that blew my mind more than that.
Okay.
I mean, like, Gus's death in Breaking Bad is up there. But I don't know if that was, like, mind-blowing. But in terms of, like, seeing Homer Simpson in the real world...
And again, you can't overstate how much of a novelty it was to see high-quality CG made just for a television show.
Oh, yeah. Maybe there'd be, like,
bonkers.
some crappy commercial.
Yeah.
Or, like, you know...
A reboot was, like... So, like, way below that, just in terms of quality.
Yeah, for sure. And then I remember I literally for years was like, you know what they should do with the next 3D Mario game? is they should like pull the move that they do in Homer 3D of just like put Mario in the real world. Yeah. Then they kind of ended up doing it with Mario Odyssey. Like it was like that freakish mashup. So whenever I see the ending of Homer 3D now, I just think of that kingdom in Mario Odyssey. Next one.
Yeah.
Treehouse of Horror 7, Season 8, The Genesis Tub.
Yes.
Which is a parody of everybody's favorite episode. What is it called? Little People? Yes, The Little People.
Yeah.
A lot of these were like Season 3 episodes of Twilight Zone. But Cork, you want to run down The Genesis Tub?
It's basically Lisa has a science experiment, and then Bart's being a big jerk. Go figure. And he's discovered static electricity. She's got a petri dish with some like mold growing in it, and he zaps it, and then it becomes alive in a different way. She just looks at it through the microscope, and she sees like little tiny people, and they're like building a civilization.
And every time she checks in, it's like they've gone up a generation in civilization or something. Like they're progressing so fast. Yeah. And then eventually Bart crushes a lot of them.
Yes.
And then they launch ships to attack Bart, which that sequence was so much cooler than I remember because the ships look like the Futurama ship.
Yeah.
And then like just the way it's shot where it's like following the ships through the hallway, going around Santa's little helper, going around like the lumps in Bart's bed and then like attacking them. Like it's all like the cinematography in that was like the best I've ever seen out of The Simpsons.
Yeah.
It's really sweet. I guess we should talk about just like the framing for Treehouse of Horror overall. It is so cool just to like let that team experiment and also just like there's a lot of really dark stuff in these episodes that it must have been a real thrill. And they had like warnings in the early episodes.
Yeah, Marge would come out in front of a curtain and say like, this is very scary, so you shouldn't watch it.
And I wonder how much of that was like the network actually wanting them to do that because it does get pretty weird and dark in moments.
Yeah, I was thinking about like, oh gosh, characters are getting decapitated and everything. It's like, no, this is basically the same amount of violence as that's in an episode of Itchy and Scratchy.
Yeah,
only
I guess
it's
so.
like Flanders is getting his head cut off instead of...
Yeah, totally. But like later on, when like Dr. Hibbert dies and stuff, like, I didn't expect to see that. But anyways, so in this episode then, eventually the little people in the tub around Lisa's tooth shrink her down.
That's right. She has a tooth in there.
Yeah. And they're like, oh,
she's a god.
Yeah. And she's like, I can't believe that you guys speak English. And he's like, yes, we've been listening to you for generations. We've learned how to imitate you exactly. And then, it's the fun twist where, yes, she's the god, but then they immediately are like, yeah, hi, I'm Bill. I live in the clock tower. Why do bad things happen to good people? And it's like, I do love it because it is taking some of the ideas from the Little People episode of Twilight Zone, specifically like, that a core idea of like, how does God create us and then let so many horrible things happen? Maybe he's disinterested or it's less relevant for him than we think, which is a fun notion for you at home to think about. But I love like, it's a new twist on it by like making those people confront Lisa directly. And then, it doesn't, this like had the weakest ending of all where she's like, oh, just go ahead and worship me. The end.
Gotta go.
Yeah, that was basically it. But in the original then Bart steals it. Yeah. This is also in the closer. Steals it and then has a science fair and then wins first prize. And Principal Skinner says, this universe you've created is even more impressive than Martin's milk carton ukulele.
And he's got like a little hula skirt on.
Yeah.
Oh, Martin.
So she's just stuck in there. There's no real ending for that whatsoever. But this is like one of those pretty loose adaptations of the Little People. Because in the Twilight Zone episode, it's like, okay, there are two astronauts, their spaceship is broken down on this planet. One person then discovers like, oh my God, there's a whole civilization of little people on this planet making little sounds. You can hear them. And then he becomes obsessed with like, oh my God, I'm their god.
Right.
They're worshiping me. They built a giant statue based off me. Then he refuses to leave the planet because the guy's like, we fixed the ship. We got to go. He's like, no, I'm a god here. Don't you understand? I'm a god. And he's like drunk on his power and he's like stomping on the little people like, oh, you better listen to me because I'll crush you if you don't. So then the spaceship takes off and he's stuck here as the god of the little people. It's really a performance of the century. Forget Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. This guy's like laughing and rolling around in the sand, just being like, oh, we have so much to do, so much time. And then, do you remember this twist?
I don't.
Then there's a horrible sound and all the little people are like, wee, wee. And he's like, don't worry. It's just a spaceship. It'll stop soon. And he's like, oh, no, it is loud. What is that? and then there's thundering, and then it turns out there are two giants that show up
and
pick him up because he's a little person to them.
Yeah.
And then they accidentally crush him in their fingers as they're trying to look at him. And it's funny because like it's just two dumb aliens, very light aliens, just like aliens, but they just had a different shirt on, like some freaky sci-fi shirt. And so one of them's like, well, shouldn't we investigate to find out if there are more little people on this planet? And the guy's like, no, don't bother. We have other things to worry about. So they just like leave then and like throw him back down to the ground, and then he's dead on top of his little people. So really puts things in perspective.
Yeah, it makes you think. I don't want to be known to little people.
Rod Serling then ends the episode by saying, it's a small exercise in space psychology that you can try on for size.
How you like it?
Oh, and then the little guys tear down the statue at the end too, because they remember that they don't like him.
We don't like you.
Here is a leap. So from season 8 to then, Treehouse of Horror-wise, season 16, there's a couple light references and stuff in there, kind of weird little, like, Wild Barts Can't Be Broken, season 10. The wiki says that, okay, it ends with the old people kicking the can. There's a reference to kick the can there, obviously. Subtle homage. Season 8, Earl being a robot rather than being a human is a reference to the Twilight Zone episode, The Old Man in the Cave. So there's like light scatterings, but not as dedicated of an episode. Up until Treehouse of Horror 15 from season 16, a segment called The Ned Zone.
The Ned Zone.
Now this is where the idea of it being a parody is a real stretch, because they're saying that it's a parody or reminiscent of The Purple Testament, which is a season 1 episode of Twilight Zone. So in the Ned Zone, Ned is in the hospital after Homer throws a bowling ball on his head.
Yep.
And it turns out that if he touches people, he can see how they die.
Yes.
Is this a concept from some other movie I haven't seen? Is this what's that one? Final Destination?
Camera. Also, that's
certain. Yeah, most unusual camera.
Most unusual camera, certain type of camera.
You're right. So it is like a weird fusion of Purple Testament and then most unusual camera.
Kind of like that, yeah.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, it's exactly right. Because they're saying that it's like a reference to Purple Testament in the wiki. But Purple Testament is just like the soldier in World War II. And when someone looked like they were, or someone was going to die in the war, they'd have like a glimmer on their face. Basically, they would just like shine an extra light on somebody's face. But
you didn't see how they were going to die.
No, and it wasn't a matter of like touching them or anything, you know?
Also, that's filmed in black and white, that episode, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's weird. This one, like everybody was yellow.
Yeah.
So Ned's going around, he can see people dying. He sees that Hibbert, falls out of the hospital window and like splatters on the ground, which is really messed up. He injects himself with morphine on his way down. So
yes.
I guess that's a season 16 level joke. This joke, it's up there with slamming Whoopi Goldberg as he goes to the Rosie O'Donnell musical and sees that it's going to shut down after 3 weeks. He's like, I guess I didn't need this power to see that. Yeah. And then he touches Homer and sees that he's going to shoot Homer in the back 3 times. There's like blood and stuff coming out of Homer. It's crazy. And then it's a big twist about like, he doesn't want to do it, so he's destroying all the guns around him. The classic conundrum. Then it finds out that he touches Homer again, sees that Homer's going to blow up the entire town with the power plant by hitting like the core destruct button or whatever.
Right.
So then he's trying to stop Homer from doing that. And so in order to stop him from hitting that button, because there's an intercom malfunction, you know the drill, he ends up shooting Homer 3 times.
Yes.
And Homer like is flailing and like flailing before he dies right before, like above the destruct core button. And Flanders is like, no, fall away from the button, fall away from the button. And then eventually Homer hits the button and they go to heaven.
Yeah.
And then Dennis Rodman. No, that's not it. That's the next one.
Yeah.
And then they're in heaven and his garage is up there, which is a silly sight gag.
It's fine.
We're nearing the fine era of The Simpsons. Season 17, Treehouse of Horror 16. This one's called I've Grown a Costume on My Face. The wiki says it's a parody of The Masks, which is a real stretch.
It's a real stretch.
What is this one about, Clark?
This one is basically there's a witch who wins the costume contest for Springfield.
Yeah.
And then she casts the spells that they become what their costume is.
And that's about as far as it goes for The Masks reference.
Yeah.
Which
the best one I think is what's his face?
Disco Stew?
No, not Disco Stew. It's Nelson.
Yeah. Oh, because Nelson is trying to be the Lone Ranger and he gets turned into a raccoon.
Because it's just grease on his eyes because he couldn't afford a mask.
Yeah.
So he gets turned into a raccoon.
I thought one of the most disturbing things was the Disco Stew one, where he had like the Steve Martin like arrow hat.
Yeah.
And then when he's turned into his real costume, then it's like, oh, he actually has an arrow through his head. So he's like, like convulsing on the ground. That's a really effed up image. But then Chief Wiggum decides to, for his costume, be a certain person. Is this where you're going to for not aging well?
Yeah.
Who does he choose?
Maybe Jared from Subway.
And he says, you know, the guy who's only a little overweight and sexually ambiguous. Isn't that weird that they go for sexually ambiguous? Like making a Jared Fogle sexuality joke.
Yeah.
What a weird call. Anyways, this is obviously before the scandal.
Yep.
And then they find out, oh, Maggie was a witch. She's a real witch now, so she turns them all into pacifiers. And then that's the end. And then Dennis Rodman comes out, and it's kind of a dud of an ending. It's not great. But The Masks is an episode where they go to New Orleans, and then the guy is giving away his inheritance on his deathbed, but he makes these family members wear masks, and then they all take off the masks at the end, and it's like baked into their face.
The stroke of midnight.
Yes, and it reveals who they really are on the inside.
Yeah.
It's a great episode. Then this is very confusing. I thought we should include it. Season 25, Treehouse of Horror 24, of course. Mm-hmm. It references that in the opening sequence, Rod Serling is actually in the show smoking a cigarette. I watched this so many times, and it is like...
impossible to see.
It's in there, but it is milliseconds. It is like the intro that apparently Guillermo del Toro directed, so it's a lot of references to Pan's Labyrinth and all his favorite characters from Hellboy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Rod Serling bit is microscopic, barely even in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, very strange. Cork.
And that's it.
There's a lot of other little things here and there.
Yeah.
For example, in season 23, Them Robot, the robot who saves Homer's life by pushing him out of the path of an oncoming truck is like the self-sacrificing robot in I Sing the Body Electric. I mean, that's like the level of references, but it's nice to know that, you know, it's a bunch of dorks on The Simpsons, and of course they're going to love Twilight Zone because it's undeniably one of the greatest shows of all time.
Exactly.
And it was probably pretty cool in like the early 90s to like call back to Twilight Zone, because it wasn't until 2000s that reboot happened. The movie was what, 83?
So they also had the series in the 80s also.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. But I guess they're hardcore, so they want to go back for the original ones, of course, stuff like that. Did I tell you that I got to go to that table read for The Simpsons?
Yeah, tell that story. It's fascinating.
It comes because of the Treehouse of Horror stuff. So it was E3 2019. Dan Reichert, friend of the show, now WWE superstar Dan Reichert, he just said like, hey, I got invited to go to a table read because somebody that is working on The Simpsons on like the casting crew, I forget, some casting department thingy, he was in the credits for a bunch of Treehouse of Horrors, and he would write his name as, I forget what his name is, and I'm sorry, but he would use as his middle name Beastcast, which is a reference to Giant Bomb's East, Giant Bomb East podcast. And so because of that, then a lot of people were like tweeting it at Dan and all those folks. And so then they got in contact. And so this guy just invited Dan and other Giant Bomb folks to come down to the Simpsons table read in LA, because it was like pretty early in the morning before E3 opened up. And thank God nobody else from Giant Bomb could make it. Alex Navarro had a hot Shenmue 3 appointment, which has stood the test of time well. And so it was myself, actually Ben Pack from Giant Bomb, and then Dan Reichert. And we traveled over and went to a Simpsons table read, which was like just the honor of a lifetime. And on the drive over there, we're talking about like, I wonder if there's going to be a celebrity guest.
Right.
Wouldn't that be weird if there's a celebrity guest in this episode? And then we get there, and I went to the bathroom, came back out, and Dan was talking to the people that worked on the show. And Dan's like, hey, turns out there's a celebrity guest. Guess who it is? And like at that point, your mind is just the Mario Kart item wheel. Oh my God, who am I going to meet today? This could be any celebrity under the sun. Like with The Simpsons, it literally could be anybody.
It could be Sting.
Yes. Oh God, my fingers were crossed that it was Sting. And then it turns out it was Werner Herzog.
They could not have come up with a better poll for you.
It is the best, most random. Waking up that morning, the idea that I had no idea I was about to meet Werner Herzog is mind blowing.
Yeah.
And so
you had the reaction as he did when he met Baby Yoda.
That's right. Werner Herzog is my Baby Yoda. Yeah. But like, I love Grizzly Man. Like, oh, that documentary is chilling to its core. And so it was lovely. So we sat in there, and it was maybe like 30 or 40 of us in this big conference room, and they said like, oh, just don't get in the way. But they're like, oh, but please laugh. Like the reason we bring in guests for all these table reads is because like this is the last chance for the writers to get a sense of what works and what doesn't.
And real quick, like what is a table read for people that don't know what a table read is?
They have the script of The Simpsons and they get all the cast together and they read through all the lines just to make sure that it flows well.
Yep.
Final tweaks, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was just amazing to be sitting there as a huge Simpsons fan. That's like, oh, Dan Castellaneta walks into the room. And like the guy who worked on The Simpsons told us beforehand, like, hey, just so you know, Dan Castellaneta, like, he will be there milliseconds before the read starts and he is out the door 1 second after it stops. So like, don't expect to talk to him at all, right? And it was stunning. I mean, after doing this for 30 some years, that is exactly what it is. Is like, he just got in there, sat down, did the table read, and then got the hell out. But at the same time, like, he was the most fun. Like, he was the loosest. And like, we all had versions of the script, which, by the way, I got signed by Werner Herzog, and I have it upstairs. Like,
really?
It's the best. It's my most cherished
possession. You're auctioning that off for Extra Life?
And I have it upstairs. So anyways, Dan Castellaneta was going through the script, and he was like the loosest. Like, he was improvising a lot. There's a section in the episode, which I don't think that episode's even aired yet.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into it. But it's an episode that involved Fortnite in a big way, which was like, oh, it's perfect that we work on it or work in the industry. And so anyways, there's a section where Homer is singing Jungle Boogie.
Yeah.
And like Dan Castellaneta like just kept stretching it out and like joking and adding new verses to like his weird Homer version of Jungle Boogie. And like the room was just slayed. And that was the crazy thing is like, even though everybody knows later Simpsons, not the funniest, it's not as great as it was. Like in that room, I was like, this is the funniest episode I've ever heard in my life. Like it was just annihilating. And I can't wait for the episode to come out so that I can send it to people and be like, watch this. Let me know if I'm insane. Yeah. Like how much of it was just the energy in the room versus what was actually on the page.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember it being hilarious. But let's see. So a couple people like Julie Kavner, Marge, she phoned in, not meaning she phoned it in, but like literally she was calling from somewhere else. Also, Hank Azaria wasn't there. He also called in. But the crazy thing is that like you're sitting in the room and it's like, oh, Nancy Cartwright, all these people, you know them, you love them. Yeardley Smith. Yeah. Oh, I love City Slickers. And so it was awesome to see all of them just shift into this character mode. But then the part that blows your mind is there's so many like ancillary people at the table. It's like, I don't know who that is. I don't know that face at all. And then they jump into it and it's like, oh, you're like the old woman in The Simpsons. Like there's so many like C to D tier characters that their voices are like baked into your soul, and hearing that come from these people is amazing. And there was a moment, seamless, where Hank Azaria, apparently his phone call dropped, and then one of those like additional voices guys noticed that, and without even communicating a word, just did all the rest of Hank Azaria's lines. Yeah. And I was like, what is this transition? But like, no, they just know. If the call drops, I'll just pick it up. And it's like that weird shorthand after working together for so long. But then there's also a moment that was funny where Nancy Cartwright was going through the script, and then she's like, Data. She gets this guy named Data. She's like, I don't remember what Data sounds like. And he's like the nerdy kid. Like,
he's one of the Super Friends.
I guess so. Yeah. And so that was funny to hear her like, I'm stumped. I don't remember what this is. And then people are like trying to guide her like, oh, he's the nerdy kid guy. He's kind of like this. And she's like, oh, that's right. And like snapped right back into it. But yeah, it was amazing. Then afterwards, met Werner Herzog. Oh, and by the way, during the table read, he was the biggest ham. Like he was laughing uncontrollably and like stretching his scenes out and dialogue out and like basically slamming the table because he was laughing so hard about all this stuff. Like,
so he's a fun guy.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but he was very in love with the idea of being silly and making these voices and like everybody laughing along with him. But then afterwards, like when we met him and it said like, oh, it seems like you're really enjoying it there. And he goes, yeah, I don't know how you can't enjoy it with this writing. And so like he was like a little bit flat later on. It's not like he was secretly a big jokester or anything, but like I was just struck by how hammy he was during the read itself. But, it was incredible. And then I was like, all right, well, I didn't talk to any other celebrities. I maybe should have, but it's like, what am I going to do? Like I have Werner Herzog's autograph on a Simpsons script. Like I should cap it off here. Yeah.
I like your story. It's very nice.
Thanks, man. What have you been up to?
Nothing. Just working, hanging out, watching Simpsons.
Yeah?
Yeah.
When Twilight Zone Season 2 picks up.
Do we know what that is?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But they announced the cast. Have you seen this?
No.
Let's go through it here. But when that picks up, are you going to be excited to come record more episodes? Or is it going to be like, oh, Christ, can we talk about AFI again, please?
I am very excited.
Are you more excited about continuing this podcast in the future?
Oh.
Or some AFI content?
Both.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You know what I found out?
Yeah.
That episode of the rebooted series, Not All Men, was apparently written by Heather Ann Campbell, who's co-host of the podcast How Did This Get Played?
Oh, really?
With Nick Weiger, which is a fantastic podcast.
Oh, very interesting.
So there you go.
Oh, that's cool. That was a good episode, from what I recall.
Yeah.
All right, so here we go. We have a Slash Filmcast article. Oh, by the way, if you're confused with the AFI references, we should probably mention because we haven't had...
Film Institute.
That's right. We're big film heads here. But no, we also have a podcast called A Fire Inside Out, which covers everything about the band AFI. It's doing what to AFI what we did to Twilight Zone in Twilight Highlight Zone, which is defile it.
Oh.
But hopefully we'll be bringing that back when AFI kicks into gear.
Yeah, come on, guys. Give us some rock and roll.
More rock and roll. Okay, here we go. So Jordan Peele, Season 2. The cast for the second season includes everybody's favorite, Danielle Sunjata.
Sure.
I don't know. Billy Porter.
Uh-huh.
Jenna Elfman.
Okay.
Jillian Jacobs. Joel McHale.
Uh-huh.
And Danielle Sunjata. Let's see. There's also... I'm looking for remakes. Elfman stars in an episode called A Human Face. With a script by Alex Rubens. Mm-hmm. Okay, we remember him from the first season. He wrote some good ones. Among the Downtrodden, an episode called 8. Meet in the Middle. Okay. Well, this seems all right.
You know what? I'm more interested in what these actors are going to be doing.
Well, I was hoping that there'd be like some remakes or something like that in the batch here. Yeah, it's just a lot of the talent that wrote other stuff will be coming back to write Season 2. So you heard it here first. As long as you didn't check out Slash Film on January 12th, 2020.
Yeah.
But we'll be here to review all those new episodes with the same fire and tenacity that we've put on display right here. And in future episodes, we won't just quote the funny things. We'll actually talk more about the structure of the story and performances.
Egghead stuff.
Real egghead stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for watching and listening, everybody. Again, if you're watching this, please subscribe to the audio version. If you're listening to this, you can subscribe to youtube.com/MinnMax Show. We have the MinnMax Show podcast. Cork, you said it. MinnMax Show podcast, which airs every Thursday, and a bunch of bonus stuff going on the YouTube channel and exclusive Patreon feed. If you want to support us, it's patreon.com/MinnMax.
2 ends.
Yeah. All right. Until next time, Twilight, Highlight. From in-depth game club discussions with the community to live streams every single week, weekly podcasts, exclusive videos, everything under the sun is at patreon.com/MinnMax2ends. Check it out, everybody.